So it seems that the history of humans is the history of the struggle for freedom. And there's so much that we can learn from the past struggles that humans have faced, that we have faced as a society. Because sometimes it can feel that we are not making any progress and that we are stuck in these repeating cycles of having to fight for our freedom, and there are new ways that, I don't know, external forces are trying to take freedom from us and liberty. This is like we're stuck on this endless loop over and over again. So today we're going to shine some light on the lessons so that we do not have to repeat these struggles again, and maybe that we can also learn how to value where we are today and how far we come on the fight for freedom. So I would like to start not on the past, but we should start where we are on the present. So I'll make a couple questions for both of you. What's the biggest challenge that you see today in the struggle for freedom? We can start with you, Nodar.
Me or?
You.
Okay. Thank you very much to invite here. I'm happy to have possibility to speak with you and to say some of my opinions about current situation, about past and future. And I think it's very important, like these conversations, not only between of us, as I'm going to say later, also it's very important to speak many different views with our students. I think many people here who are here have students, and when we teach them, we also should give them some experience which is in modern world by my country, which was post-Soviet country, Georgia, from Soviet Union, and for example, my friend Henry's country. We should know more about the countries. We should analyze the system, and we should use the experience we have now. No, I will say a little bit more later.
Okay, Henry.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, and it's a great honor again to be part of the LI conference this year. And as I say every year, I'm very grateful to LI for giving a platform for the issue of North Korean human rights and the work that and the lives and the work of the North Korean defectors who are living in freedom after having escaped North Korea. And just want to thank Jacek and Ken. Also, Maria, it's so great to see familiar faces again, and hope to meet new faces here during the conference also. But regarding your question, Maria, I think, of course, with my background and experience working on the North Korea human rights issue, I think the biggest challenge of today in terms of that issue, from the way I see it, is I think the level of indifference or the level of I guess lack of awareness or knowledge about what is going on in North Korea. Many people don't realize that North Korea is the only industrialized nation that went through a mass starvation on nationwide level. It's the only country that still maintains a political prison camp situation with hundreds of thousands of inmates. It's the only country that they say they don't, they've decreased public executions, but there's public executions still going on. There's a massive level of brainwashing and propagandization of the people. And yet people in the West, outside of North Korea, when we think of North Korea, or as North Koreans like to call themselves DPRK, there was a recent UPR, Universal Periodic Review session at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and every time Western diplomats said North Korea instead of DPRK, the DPRK diplomats started pounding on the desk and interfering with the diplomats. But you have a situation where people in the West, when it comes to North Korea, they think of Kim Jong-un being this, overweight, fat, funny leader, and they don't look beyond that image of, this funny, weird, dictator, and, try to understand and see the suffering still of the 22, 23 million people in North Korea, and the effects of the 70 years of dictatorial, tyrannical regime has had not only on its people, but on the region, South Korea, Japan, and even being a threat to the national security of the United States. So to answer your question, I think people, well, not just North Korea obviously, but many issues across the world obviously, but as a North Korean human rights activist, I think people should look beyond just the weird dictatorship and see what is really going on and how much of an existential threat North Korea poses to the region and to the entire world.
Thank you both. It's interesting that you both talk about awareness and information, because even though we're in 2024 and we're hyper digitalized, we're supposed to be hyper connect, and there's the internet, and now there's so many things that we can stay connected. There's AI now, which is also crazy, but there's still so little awareness on what happens around the world, and so many important issues like North Korea, things that happen in Georgia, what's happening in all over the world, get forgotten by mainstream media. So it seems that we, as I said, we keep getting stuck in this loop. But how would you compare past struggles, especially in your regions, to the current struggle that we are experiencing today? How would you compare past to the present right now?
Say truth, it's hard not to compare my past, my country's past, and the modern situation. And very interesting to find many similar parallels in the Soviet country and modern Western civilization. I all time think that without knowing what was happening in that time, we will repeat same mistakes what we had that time. I don't know how many times do I have to answer these questions, but shortly saying, I am afraid that modern world repeats some of the cases we had in Soviet Union. For example, in Soviet Union, just now I remembered about gender quota, because it's like a new trend in Western civilization. In Soviet Union, we had this gender quota. And not only this gender quota, we had also quota for ethnic groups, for workers, for farmers, for who lived in mountains. Every group had its quota in parliament, but we had not any election actually. So if we go to the same way as the Soviet Union did, so we will do similar situation as Soviet Union did at the time. And it will lead us to collapse the Western civilization, which took some of the Soviet experiences without analyzing them. And the most big problem is that one of my friends a few years ago, who lives in Canada, said me that it was big catastrophe for USA and the Western civilization, the collapse of Soviet Union. Why? Because Western civilization knew that they should not do like Soviet Union does. They knew, but now no country is in the world who compete them with this system, whom they should compete. And in this situation, they took many methods and many approaches of Soviet Union in Western civilization. They repeat the same. And this will not lead us in good situation. And we see that we have many different problems, and so like leaders in European countries, and not only European countries also, I mean USA and other some countries where we still have possibility to choose really our leaders, we see that it becomes worse and worse. Worse leaders and worse leaders. Why? Because we don't understand what was happening in Soviet Union. We need to know more, to analyze it more. North Korea, for example, is maybe simple, but we have also very less information from North Korea. We don't know what is happening here. By myself, I understand, as I remember from my childhood, it should be similar in North Korea now, but it is not enough. I think I would like to say to the audience and every person who works with students, it's very important to help the students understand what was happening in Soviet Union, what is going on now in North Korea or in Venezuela. If I work, for example, in Chicago University, someone was here from Chicago, I saw. I'd try to invite some persons from post-Soviet countries to meet them, to students, to colleagues, and to make some discussions, some colloquium maybe or something like this, to analyze the situation, what was there. And I can assure you that I can remember many things for analyzing, for understanding the situation we had in Soviet Union. And also very important, some people in modern Georgia too remember the Soviet Union, the Soviet times as good times. And we need to understand why do they think so. It's very important too, because we need to see what was there really good. Was it really good or not? Or they are mistaken? What was the problem and why do they think so? If we understand, if we analyze everything like this, we have more chance to go to freedom, which is our main aim, let's say so. So, and also until my friend Henry will continue, I would like to ask, can I ask? I would like to ask him when he was last time in North Korea and how is going there, the situation.
Well, I'm not from North Korea originally. I was born in South Korea. So yeah, people confuse me for being a North Korean because I spent so much time with North Korean defectors. Started to. No, I've been, the closest I've been to North Korea was in the China-North Korea border in 2006, but I can't go to China anymore myself for obvious reasons. But to answer your question, Maria, if I may, and so that's your question, or is a very interesting one, because North Korea is the one country where pretty much, unless you get special permission from the government of North Korea, you cannot travel there. And the State Department, the U.S. government, still has Trump-era ban on U.S. citizens from traveling to North Korea, except for, I think, just recently they allowed some, the humanitarian aid and stuff like that to slowly creep back in. But to answer your question, again, North Korea is just one basically giant prison camp, and there are no, quote-unquote past struggles internally within the country that we can compare to today. Any dissent that may have been inside the country probably been crushed immediately. But what I would say is that the North Korea today, and you'll hear later in the afternoon from somebody who's actually from North Korea, who LI has invited as one of the speakers for this year's conference. But I would say that North Korea today is not the same North Korea compared to even 10 years ago. Definitely not the same North Korea 20 years ago when Kim Jong-il was in power, and definitely not the same North Korea as when the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, was in power. And what I mean by that is, even though North Korea is still, a state where there's total control of information in and out of the country, and where the people are still having a very difficult time, you have a situation where North Korea, the cracks have already been formed inside the country, where you have the 35,000 defectors that are living in South Korea and the hundreds that are living in other countries. We have 243 North Korean defectors that have been accepted as refugees in the United States, and there's several hundred that live in Canada and Europe and elsewhere. But these people, and of course, with the opening up of, with the collapse of the public distribution system and the creation of the people-generated markets, or the 장마당s, or the black markets in North Korea, and the inevitable fact that Kim Jong-un had to, at one point, after he came to power, look the other way and sort of, allow people to, trade and go back and forth between North Korea and China, and survive on their own, because the state had utterly failed to provide for the people. So you have a situation for Kim Jong-un that is radically different than when his father or when his grandfather was in power in North Korea. And so that, coupled with the defectors that have escaped from North Korea, and them sending in money through brokers in China to their relatives and family members in North Korea, and sending in information, and more importantly, bringing out information from North Korea, we have far more awareness and knowledge about what is going on inside North Korea today than I would say, again, 10, 20, and definitely 30, 40 years ago. Yes, North Korea is still, a terrible place. I see hope in the sense that with more time passing and more North Koreans trying to get out, and of course right now getting out of North Korea itself is very difficult, if not nearly impossible, but the North Koreans that are in China who are able to come to South Korea, and the continuing information dissemination and information from North Korea, as long as those kind of work continues, I think we will eventually see bigger changes happen. Now, geopolitically speaking, with Putin, begging for help to Kim Jong-un, and how embarrassing is that for Russia? Mighty Russia asking Kim Jong-un for help. That in and of itself should be a great psychological operation that we should exploit and target the Russians. But geopolitically, with Russia getting involved with North Korea getting involved with the Russia-Ukraine war, and North Korea is still continuing to threaten and provoke South Korea by sending the balloons, the trash balloons, and messing with the GPS signals, and messing up the flights in and out of Incheon Airport, and continuing to promote and foment dissent within South Korea by supporting leftist and progressive the North Korean supporters in South Korea. There are all these issues that are going on inside the country that are very worrisome, politically and internally and all that. But I see hope in the sense that with the work of the younger generation of North Korean defectors, people like you will hear today, this afternoon, Ms. Jang and others, who are working to reach their fellow North Koreans inside the country and to educate the public in the West about what's going on in North Korea. And these are young, smart, English-speaking young North Korean defectors. They're Fulbright scholars, they're going to Ivy League schools, they're doing very well adjusting to life in the West, in South Korea and elsewhere. And so I have hope in the future generation, the next generation, the young generation of these North Korean defectors who have escaped from North Korea, who are able to talk to people like you and work together to bring about freedom for the people of North Korea.
Thank you, Henry.
Yes, I remember we had one North Korean girl in last year here, yes.
And we'll hear from her again tomorrow, I believe. So it seems that, thank you for that positive, and on that note, it seems that we are advancing, but these changes seem to be generational, but our lives are so short as humans. But it seems that the life of the regimes are so longer, they're like monsters, and it feels sometimes that we are David against Goliath on this endless war. But there are some key lessons that we have learned from past struggles, even if our armies and our resources were small and tiny. We were still able to learn some things and advance. So what will be some of those key lessons that we can learn from the past, from the Soviet Union and from the story in North Korea as well, that we need to preserve to give us as ammunition for younger generations, so that we don't forget those key lessons that we have already learned in past generations that we need to keep alive.
Okay, we should not forget. So, Mr. Henry said he is from South Korea. As I understand, he has not been in North Korea. So it looks like I have most experience what it looks like to live in North Korea. It's like Soviet Georgia and only worse. Because I understand it's much closer, much stronger regime there than it was in my childhood in Soviet Union and Soviet Georgia. So to at this time, how we come out from that time, it's very important to mention about one thing. That's one of our famous phase in Georgia in 80s, when it was clear that Soviet Union will collapse soon. The person, Akaki Bakradze, has said once that like these things, it's very easy to rebuild everything rebuild the system, remake everything, make good economy, go ahead, but only the problem, most big problem is brain of the people who lived in Soviet times and they cannot receive this new system, and they cannot live in new system because they are I don't know how can I translate this saying that it's
brainwashed, maybe.
Yes, they are brainwashed, and it's much harder to teach them than to teach the children, for example. It's easier. So it's very important to make education system as better as possible, and to teach the children. So I am very active to use, for example, Chinchaladze book to work with the children and with students. I try to teach teachers too, but when I'm looking to them, I understand that it's no reason. They don't change their mind. They can repeat everything, but they are not getting this mind inside themselves. So when I think what is more reasonable, I think we should work more with youngsters. Mr. Henry said the same. So we should work more with youngsters, and we need to use more different ways how to achieve in their hearts, not only brain, also hearts, that they need to understand what is moral and what is immoral. That many people think that socialists are morally correct. Socialism is morally correct, and it's totally opposite of this. Socialism is immoral, and we need to make them understand that socialism is immoral. So to show them this, we need different cases. Some of them I could say but I understand that I have not enough time to say any of them. Later maybe we will have possibility.
Well, Maria, that's a great question, and I would answer that by framing the answer with the more focus on South Korea. And what I mean by that is, South Korea, came out of the destruction and the utter ruin of the Korean War, and within 70 years has achieved great prosperity, wealth, and stability in terms of like the economy and the well-being of the people. I left South Korea in 1982 when I came to the U.S. And even in '82, I remember South Korea. That it was just when it was kind of getting out of that, the being a poor, developing country and becoming industrialized, on its way to being, the rich nation that it is today. And I feel that as somebody who, hasn't lived in South Korea for, over 40 years, but I do go back to South Korea quite often and try to keep up with the news of what's going on internally inside the country as it relates to North Korea and the region, obviously. But I feel that many in South Korea have become, especially the younger generation in South Korea, have become too comfortable, too complacent, and they have forgotten what it took for the older generation of South Korea to bring South Korea to where it is today. To go from, I think the GDP was like $100 at the end of the Korean War to being, like the 10th richest economy in the world. Within 7 decades, it's a miracle by anyone's standards. And I feel that many younger South Koreans don't realize what kind of sacrifice it took to prevent South Korea being overrun by North Korean communists in the Korean War, and, with the help of the Chinese Communist Party, obviously. That didn't happen, thankfully, not only due to the great sacrifice of the Korean people, but also because of the crucial help that the United States provided. And last year, we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the US-RK alliance, which is a crucial, very important linchpin to the national security of both South Korea and the US. So my answer to that would be, I think South Korea, especially the younger people in South Korea, need to know, need to relearn history, basically. I grew up, the few years that I lived in South Korea, just, in elementary school when I was growing up, we had anti-communist education. They got rid of that in South Korea many years ago. And so kids these days don't know, what threat they live, 30 miles below the DMZ, for example. Regarding unification of the two Koreas, North and South Korea, many South Koreans don't feel that unification is necessary. And that is truly shocking, which basically means they prefer North Koreans to, continue to live in utter misery and poverty, which, I think that whole system needs to be overhauled in terms of the education system in South Korea as well. And, I've had many North Korean defectors say that when they came to South Korea, they met more, pro-North Korea or North Korean supporters in South Korea than they ever did when living in North Korea. And they say it sort of as like a half joke, half truth, but that's the situation we have in South Korea, where people have just become, I think best way to put it is they became too rich too quick, and they've forgotten what kind of sacrifice it took for the older generation to make South Korea what it is today. And same thing goes for North Korean defectors who end up coming to South Korea. They too sort of become complacent and comfortable living the fantastic life that they're living in South Korea in terms of the comfort, in terms of the wealth, etc. So I think in terms of key lessons, I think, it almost sounds like a cliche, we have to remember the past, but it's so important. If we don't remember the past, we're not gonna, go to the right way in terms of the future. So for that question, I think, that phrase, remembering the past, I think it's very fitting for South Korea and the people in South Korea as they deal with the North Korean issue, and also for North Korean defectors and activists like myself, because we have to remember what kind of struggle we went through in terms of raising awareness to fight the regime, and then to, we can't let that go to waste, or we can't, let that opportunity, just go to waste like that. So.
Can I add? So on the North Korea and South Korea, we have experience of West Germany and East Germany. When they were united, I remember they had quite big problems because there were quite big difference in economic situation in these two German countries. Actually, East Germany was most developed country in Soviet countries. We knew every Georgia, for example, knew that East Germany is developed country, very developed country. But when they were united, it appears that East Germany is in very bad situation, and till now, 30 years already, yes, more than 35 years already, East Germany looks like, if you see the map, you will see that in East Germany economic situation is not very good yet, till now. And West Germany people, we are angry about the situation at the beginning, and now I don't know, maybe not, but it's quite a hard situation to unite North Korea and South Korea, because they had more time to live separately, and they will have problem in this situation.
That's an excellent point. If I may just address that, Maria. So, right, so many people do make that comparison between North and South Korea and West and East Germany, but people don't realize that between West Germany and East Germany, people could travel between those two countries, but that's not the situation in the Korean Peninsula. The reason why so many North Koreans go through the Yalu River or the Tumen River to cross into China and then find their way through Southeast Asia and end up in South Korea, when you can just go straight down to the DMZ, which is not possible. The reason why I do that is obviously because of the DMZ. DMZ is the most heavily fortified border in the world, and that's why these North Koreans, starting with the arduous march when the mass famine and starvation began in the late 90s, early 2000s, that's why they risked their lives to go through China. And then, the issue of China and China's policy of repatriation of these North Koreans back to North Korea. I mean, that's like a whole other panel session right there. But the reason why they risk all that to go through China is because they want freedom in South Korea. And North Korea, unlike East Germany and West Germany situation, there is no communication, there's no correspondence allowed, there's no, again, referring back to the total control of information, which, again, there's slowly cracks appearing in that total control of the information. It's not it's comparable to what happened in East and West Germany. So that's something people also have to remember when we're talking about North and South Korea. You have a situation where even though they speak the same Korean language, there's South Korean Korean, and then there's also North Korean Korean, which is massively different because the North Korean Korean uses a lot of borrowed Russian words, and South Korean Korean uses a lot of English words and French, German. That's been like kind of mixed into the everyday language that Koreans use in South Korea. So there's that language difference. And this is some of the things that defectors, when they come to South Korea, they have such difficulty understanding and adjusting to life in South Korea because they're hearing Korean, but they don't understand what's being said because these are foreign words that are spoken in Korean, one example. And then again, there's even physical difference that has risen from the starvation and the lack of nutrition, where North Koreans on average are shorter by like, I don't know the exact height difference, but by a couple inches or a couple centimeters, but still, there's that difference also. So you have, just a really, really remarkably in a bad way, the situation in North Korea that is so drastically different from South Korea. So when unification does happen, I mean, the amount that West Germany spent to overcome the differences that it had with absorbing East Germany, it's going to be pale in comparison to what South Korea and what South Koreans have to sacrifice in order to fully embrace their northern brothers and sisters. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of South Koreans don't want unification. But that's a difficult, painful step that I believe South Koreans should take because, North Koreans, by the Constitution of South Korea, they're considered citizens of South Korea. And for South Koreans to, in a way, ignore or to turn the other way when their fellow North Koreans are held in that hellhole, I think that's a lesson for South Koreans to kind of, come out of and find a better solution than to try to ignore the situation.
Much heavier situation than in Germany.
That's true, and we live in this modern age with all this being with such a comfortable life that it's easy to forget that there are so many people out there struggling. Especially when you live in a big city, you have access to everything. So and you forget that so many people don't have that. And sometimes we hear these numbers and these general issues, and they feel so far away and so foreign from us. And that can be something that's why maybe younger generations also are so disconnected from reality in a way or the other. So I want both of you, given that you are long-time freedom fighters, if you can share a specific struggle story that you've heard, that you've lived, that that inspired you to remain being an activist and to remain fighting for freedom. Sometimes when we put real people's stories, it's easier to connect, especially in this social media age. We can start with you, Henry, if you want this time.
Sure. So, I've been doing North Korean human rights activism work for close to almost 20 years, and I started out interpreting. I didn't start out as an interpreter, but I ended up interpreting for a lot of these defectors when they visited the U.S., D.C., New York, elsewhere, for speaking events, testifying in Congress, etc. And then deep down level, if you ask me why I'm doing this, there's a spiritual faith-based reason, which I don't want to get into that because we don't have time, but and then so doing this, I've come to know more North Korean defective friends than like non-North Korean friends in my life, which is fantastic. But over the years, having interpreted for so many of these defectors, reading their stories, reading their books, getting to know them in my own life, especially the defectors that live in the D.C., the Maryland, Virginia area, where I'm based in Virginia right now. Getting to know them, and some of them have become my best friends, and I guess to the point where they consider me like an honorary North Korean defector, which I think is a great honor. But I have like a lot of like nightmares and like bad dreams where I'm either like escaping. So I'm in North Korea in these dreams. I'm in a prison camp trying to escape, or I'm running through the river, trying to cross into China. I'm getting shot at. And there are times when I wake up and just sweating, and thank God I'm in the U.S. and I'm not in North Korea. So having working with these defectors, that I guess that has affected me. So people ask me, why are you doing this? It's like you could be doing other stuff with your talent, with your career, et cetera, whatever. But I tell them, look, I do this because, the people that I meet, the North Koreans who, and by the way, North Koreans, we have this, the sense that, again, it's correct to say that North Korea is a totalitarian, tyrannical, hellhole, but North Koreans, still living in that country, they have lives just like us. And what I mean by that is, they have, there are parents in North Korea who worry about, their kids going to the best school. There are young North Koreans who, fall in love and they can't express their love to one another. And, they live just like us. It's just that they live under a terrible dictatorship in North Korea. They're not all like brainwashed, like robots running around. I mean, they are brainwashed, but, they have, characters just like, people living in the West. And that's what I want to say. But, so these North Koreans, I've come to, value them and see them as such dear friends and important people in my life. And one story I'll tell you is that there's a woman who spent 28 years in a prison camp in North Korea. Not 28 months, not 28 weeks, 28 years in a prison camp. And she was able to escape. And she wrote a book, and it came out in 2009. And now she's kind of living a quiet life. And so I asked her, how do you, 28 years? I mean, for us in the West, we can't even imagine spending 28 minutes in a prison camp in North Korea. But she spent 28 years, and she's one of the most loving, fun, happy-going, joy-filled person, that you could ever meet. And I asked her, Ms. Kim, what gives you hope? Aren't you bitter? Aren't you, mad about what you experienced? And, she basically said, there's no point in being bitter because she already spent 30 years of her life in North Korea. There's no point in, worrying about the past or thinking about the past. She just loves the fact that she's able to live in South Korea, despite South Korea's own, issues dealing with the whole North Korean issue and all that stuff. But she's so happy and so grateful to be living in South Korea, to be able to wake up each day in freedom, get to choose what she wants to eat, choose where she wants to go, choose what she wants to talk about. And she said that most people who have not lived under dictatorship don't know what true freedom means. And for me, for somebody that did not experience oppression and living in a dictatorship, I can't fully understand or grasp her love for freedom. Another example is, and I gave, not me, but I interpreted for a defector that testified in Congress. And after the event was over, she came up to me and she was just crying and so grateful that I was able to, because she can't speak English, obviously, unlike the younger North Korean defectors. But she was so grateful to me that I was able to be a voice for her. All I did was just interpret what she said in Korean to English to the members of Congress in the hearing room. But she was just so profoundly moved and grateful. To me, it's just part of work, just interpreting the testimony. But for her, it was her lifelong anguish and the sadness and the injustice. It was all loosened up. It was it spilled out through me. And for me to be used as the vessel to to deliver a message to members of Congress for her, that was the greatest thing. And so for me, it's moments like that give me inspiration and give me hope to continue this work. And it's people like the young woman that you'll hear today, despite all that she went through in North Korea and that environment, to be able to study in the U.S. and to be able to, want to contribute to, helping other countries when she graduates from grad school. Things like that is what gives me hope. So hopefully that will inspire you to not only get involved with the North Korean human rights issue, but other issues that are going on in the world that need our attention and help.
Can we get the name of the book and the author of your friend?
So the book, it came out in Korean only. I think somebody's working on an English translation, but it's literally, the title translated would be Tears of the Prison Camp, and her name is Ms. Kim, but yeah, maybe we should invite her next year to Argentina, I don't know.
Well, definitely taking notes of that.
It would be very interesting. Maybe once I will write a book about Soviet past. What I have written until now, not about Soviet times, about different means. But anyway, every of us, each of us comes who lives in Georgia, not only in Georgia, in post-Soviet countries, from Soviet past, and this experience is very important to understand for everyone. And if we understand well, if we understand why the people and it's very important. Some people, why do they like that time? Maybe in North Korea too, some people likes that North Korea lives, and the West is very bad. They are immoral and like this. This is like this agitation in like these countries. Only some people understand and try to escape. In North Korea, it was like this. In Soviet Union too. It was a deal how to escape from Soviet Union, and it was different ways at that time. So we need to understand that only some people understand that freedom is valuable, and most people adapt to the situation that dictatorship countries create in that territory. So we need to understand these people. Do they adapt so easy? Why they don't they try to be free, to have freedom of choice? If we don't understand this, unfortunately, democracy is the system that majority decides what to do and what kind of country they will create. And few 100 people about here, maybe few hundred understands that freedom is valuable thing, and majority will decide how to live tomorrow, and they will lead us to the autocracy or dictatorship. So we need to understand them and somehow give them to understand that freedom is very important to live better. Otherwise, no life is important maybe.
Thank you both. Before we move to the audience questions, so you get your questions ready. Now let's go into the future. This will be a really short question, but given your experience and the current state of things, the present, would you remain optimist and in the future that we start building not a future where we have to fight for freedom, but that we get to expand freedom? I personally have an issue with the fighting word. I don't want to fight. I just want to live and expand freedom. So, Nodar, are you optimistic, and why or
Yes,
why not?
I'm optimist, but sometimes I became pessimistic when I see the situation in the world, in modern world. But anyway, so we should try more and more, and we should find a way to each the person lives around us. Each of them has something important to fight for, so we should allow them to fight for their choice. They should see that their choice is very important, and if they understand that the choice, freedom of choice is important, maybe they will support us to out for our freedom.
Thank you. Henry.
Yes, I'm very optimistic and hopeful. Although there are moments of being burned out and feelings of disillusionment, but I think there is. I say this all the time. Nobody expected the USSR to collapse, but it did. And for many North Korean defectors, they feel the same way. No tyranny lasts forever, and I think Kim Jong-un, his days will come to an end, hopefully sooner rather than later. And he won't have to give, his power over to his daughter Kim Joo-ae, who's only 10 or 11 years old. But so I have great optimism and hope for the future because of the great work of the North Korean defectors, especially the younger North Korean defectors that are doing what they're doing in South Korea and elsewhere, and of the work that activists like myself and others are doing in terms of trying to break that information blockade that the Kim Jong-un regime has put up against its people, sending in balloons and, rice bottles via the ocean, shortwave radio, all sorts of information that are being sent into North Korea and that are being brought out of North Korea. So my optimism is still there, my hope is still there that the Kim Jong-un regime will fall. And then once the two Koreas are united, despite the astronomical costs and despite the sheer logistical and, social and all those walls that we have to overcome, I think one day, hopefully, we will have LIWC in a liberated Pyongyang sooner rather than later, right? That'll be wonderful, right? Yes.
I personally want to say thank you for all you do, for all the work that you do for Liberty International, and for all the inspiration that you also brought today on this panel. We're going to move for some, I have John here.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your good thoughts and good service. I'm John Chisholm from San Francisco. Two facts about the Korean War make me really appreciate both the power of freedom and how significant South Korea's accomplishment is. The first is that the main manufacturing base of Korea prior to the war was North Korea, not South Korea. And two, South Korea was the primary theater of the war. And so it was substantially destroyed during the Korean War. And in spite of those two facts, look at the difference between the two countries today.
Absolutely. And there's that famous picture, satellite photo of the peninsula where the northern part is complete darkness and the southern part is lit up like a Christmas tree. And you see Japan on the side that's very bright. And literally South Korea looks like an island in an ocean, and that's a perfect example of where the two Koreas have come after the end of the war, 60, 70 years after, how much North Korea has not developed, and how the regime has not thought about the people compared to the development and the prosperity of South Korea.
Known picture.
Thank you all so much. I have a question to Nodar, and hi. And maybe you said this before, and I missed it at the beginning. We were in Georgia 2 years ago, and we saw all the NATO flags, which were great, and EU flags. So at least in Tbilisi, it seems like a very Western-oriented society, but we all know that somebody's wet dream is to reenact the Soviet Union, and we know what happened just recently. So how easy it is to threaten the Georgian society? Is there like a difference between the young and the old? And because Russia will always be a serious threat, can they threaten them into submission?
Frighten what?
That Russia will always be a threat.
Sorry?
That Russia will always be a threat.
Ah. I don't understand the meaning of question exactly. If you mean Russian aggression, certainly it's the most biggest problem for modern Georgia, and every political action and every politician speaks about the problem from Russia. So certainly it's for us maybe unsolvable problem currently. Only Western civilization, West, USA at first certainly can help us against this problem. But our politicians also try to communicate somehow with Russia, look like so. But I'm not sure whenever Russia decides to make aggression against Georgia, they will do. I don't think that anything will help us. So we are in bad situation in this segment. If you mean this, if about social status or like this situation, frightened people, it's maybe also a big problem, but not so big as it could be seen from the view of some people. So it is solvable somehow. Maybe most people does not understand how it can be solved, but they are not afraid. Everyone has their own solution for their problem. Did I answer?
Nodar, Henry, this is kind of a contrast, but Henry, I know that South Korea's has one of the worst baby busts in the world now. I think it's what, like 0.7 kids now. And not only that, you also very much have a division where women are all voting left and men are all voting right, which is also an interesting contrast, Nodar, because your country, which I love to death, is the one country in Europe where women are still having 2.0 kids. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's, I'm actually, the South Korea is the country of my birth, and I would consider myself an American. But anyway, I still have to eat kimchi every other day. But anyway, yeah, you raise a very interesting point. If South Korea goes the way it goes, it's gonna end up not being a country like in 50 years. So I think the government is spending literally billions of dollars to try to have couples produce more babies, and you can't really force that, right? So there's a lot of financial incentives for young couples or any couples to reproduce and have babies, and that is leading to a situation for many countries with the birth rate issue, lack of people in the workforce and things like that. So South Korea is implementing a lot of things that a lot of the countries in the West went through in terms of things like bringing in foreign workers to work in the shipyards, or foreign nannies, for example, to work in these as domestic helps in these homes and other things. So, but unless there's like a drastic mindset among the South Koreans that making babies and repopulating South Korea, it's a patriotic thing to do. It's a serious concern. So I mean, I myself am still single and I don't live in South Korea, so that it doesn't apply to me. But so, and then the whole issue of the women, tending to vote more left and men tend to vote more right. I mean, I don't want to get into like South Korean politics too much, but I mean, politics in South Korea, as is the case anywhere, I guess, it's very divisive, and it's very, for lack of a better word, it's very politicized. You have for example, referring back to North Korean human rights issue, that's where my the most experience is. It's become so politicized that the issue of human rights in North Korea, the Democrats in South Korea, the Democratic Party, they treat it as like a tool or like a ploy of the conservatives. They say that, oh, you're using human rights to create your own policy and to create division within the two Koreas, whereas the South Korean conservatives say this is not a politicized issue. This shouldn't be a politicized issue. Look at countries like the US or Japan or other countries in the EU that view this human rights issue as a human rights issue, not a political issue. So that in and of itself is a very divisive factor when it comes to South Korean politics, where unfortunately and sadly, the very issue that left and right should unite together on, it's become very, very divisive. And you have a situation where the previous president of South Korea, who was a very well-known liberal, progressive president, he was the first president ever, hopefully the last. He actually repatriated North Korean defectors back to North Korea. So no one ever thought the day would come when one would say South Korea repatriated North Korean defectors back to North Korea. It was always China or other country, but that was a huge, huge controversy. These were they were fishermen, part of a large boat that came, and they were accused of murdering their fellow fishermen and whatever, etc. And they were sent back to North Korea by South Korean authorities, which that in and of itself is a grave constitutional violation, because as South Korean citizens, they should have been put on trial if the allegations were true, and then sent to jail in South Korea, whatever. But the fact that the South Korean president, South Korean administration sent these North Koreans back to North Korea was roundly criticized, not only within South Korea, obviously, but throughout the world also. So,
thank you. Final question.
Yeah, brief. Of course, for someone to escape from a place of tyranny, there has to be a place for them to go. Fortunately, Georgia has been a refuge for a lot of Russians and Ukrainians trying to flee from that hotspot. But in North Korea, the greatest tragedy is that China, of course, returns people that they capture, and therefore a lot of people, young women especially, are forced into sexual slavery in China, do finally escape. But it's a lot easier to escape to a third country like Mongolia or Thailand if countries like the United States are willing to accept them. Does the United States accept them?
Yes, so when George Bush was president in 2004, he signed the North Korea Human Rights Act And so this allowed for legislation to allow for North Korean refugees to be accepted into the U.S. as refugees. So under that act, we have 243 North Korean defectors that have been officially accepted as refugees in the United States. So that's a wonderful thing. There should be more, but just the whole bureaucratic red tape of going through the interview process with the embassy officials, et cetera, in a third country, it's just such a long process that many years ago, a lot of North Korean defectors, when they were being held at these embassies and detention facilities in Thailand or other countries, they just ended up going to South Korea. So South Korea obviously is the first country of choice for these North Koreans when they escape North Korea. South Korea provides, despite its social problems in dealing with North Koreans and all that, South Korea has an excellent system and program set in place governmentally and also NGO, from NGO platform. Government has a facility where they train and where they re-educate these North Koreans into living life in South Korea. And there's, they have, they get a little bit of resettlement money, housing, all these sorts of medical and dental and psychological help, and not only from the government, but there's a lot of NGO and foundations and churches and a lot of people and a lot of groups that are in place in South Korea to help these North Korean defectors. And there's a little bit of that in the U.S. also. So if anyone's interested in helping, or getting involved with helping North Korean defectors, there's so many things you can do, both in South Korea and in the U.S. So I would love to talk to you if you're interested in doing that.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause for Nodar. And Henry, thank you so much for joining us.